All right, so yeah, thanks again for having me, everyone. So yeah, hopefully by the end of the day today, everyone will feel like they understand community solar. Understand why, in my opinion at least, it's sort of a no-brainer thing to do. It's essentially free money, which sounds a little scammy, but I promise by the time we get done, you'll agree with me. Um, so let's get right into it. Just to start, a little bit about me. My name's Mike. I'm the Director of Consumer Products for Nexamp. Nexamp is the largest community solar provider in the country, but we're headquartered and founded in Boston and still very proud of our Massachusetts roots. So we do still a lot of events around here, but we're all over the country now. Our goal is to be in all 50 states eventually. Essentially, we operate in the states where legislation makes it possible to operate community solar. And our policy team is very much on the forefront of making that happen in other states. Massachusetts was actually our first. But down on the left there, you can see just an example of what a community solar farm looks like. Really, really big, much bigger than what would be on an individual rooftop. You know, think like football field sized big. That one actually is in Falmouth down on the site of a capped landfill. We're also very proud of our landscapers, we call them, sheep that live on many of our solar farms that mow the grass so it doesn't get too tall and start shading the panels. But yeah, we have over 60,000 customers today. So you'd be joining a pretty large group. All right, but what is community solar? Mainly it's an alternative to having solar panels on your property, which like Rob said, there's a lot of condo owners here, there's a lot of renters here, there's a lot of people who would love to have solar at their property, but that's just not realistic. Even if you do have a single family house, your roof might be too shaded by trees, it might face north instead of south. It might have dormers, which might block like where solar panels would go. You might just not like how solar panels look at your house. You might not be able to afford solar panels. There's a very high capital expense. There's all sorts of reasons why, even if you really, really want solar, you can't have it, which is sort of how community solar started. So it's a state-sponsored program, like I was saying. Our policy team works with utilities and states all over the country to make these programs possible. And because I know it was a question, it works in addition to Ashland Community Choice, and is actually a way to essentially maximize your savings if you're doing both of those things. It's no sign-up fees, no cancellation, or any fees ever, no, essentially zero cost to you, unlike with solar panels at your house where you'd be putting down a pretty large chunk of change to get that. All right, so what I figured I'd do is just sort of walk you guys through the steps because I think that's sort of the best way to explain how it works. So the first step is bill analysis. So at the end, I'll show you the link where you can go in and actually start this step and submit your bill. But so you'll be submitting your most recent copy of your electric bill to the Nexamp team. And we'd be looking at this section here, which is sort of off to the side, but maybe you haven't even noticed it before. It'll show us your usage over your trailing 12 months. And then we're also looking at your delivery rates, your supply rates. And again, you guys probably have a nice reduced supply rate thanks to Ashland Community Choice. And we're essentially matching that data together to figure out about how much do you spend on electricity with Eversource over the course of the year. And then what we then do is from all the data from all our solar farms is say, okay, about how many solar panels on a solar farm will produce about as many dollars worth of electricity as you use at your house. So maybe you live in a small one-bedroom condo, so we only allocate 4 panels to your house. Maybe you live in a really big single-family home, and so we allocate you 18 panels. And I'm oversimplifying it a little bit. We're actually calculating it as a percentage and not a number of panels. So it'll be something like 0.012% will be your allocation, but we're essentially matching you up with the equivalent size of the solar farm. And there might be hundreds of people, maybe even thousands, all allocated to a single solar farm. Make sense so far? Okay. Second step would then actually be getting assigned to a solar farm. So as we're doing that analysis, we don't have a specific one in mind. We have many of them. And the reason why we don't have a specific one in mind, A, is because they all pretty much generate about the same amount. Efficiency wise, like they're all, it's not like you're going to be assigned to a farm in Florida, which generates a lot more electricity.
Farming care, so-called. Well, the Heartland by Burns, but Haight-Ashbury by its record, Tim Walls, this isn't flying. The far left is jubilant tonight. He's pretty safe.
But so the only geographic restriction is that you get assigned to a solar farm that's in Eversource territory. So we wouldn't assign you to a solar farm all the way out in Western Mass. Essentially only works if the solar farm is in the same territory as your account. So for example, that project in Falmouth that I had a picture of on the first slide, that is still Eversource territory. So even though that feels really far away, that can still be the solar farm that you're allocated to. The electricity isn't literally flowing from the solar farm to your house. It's just sort of generally going to the grid. So it doesn't matter that it's far away. That is something people get worried about. But so the bummer is that there is a bit of a wait. In Eversource territory, we're actually really popular right now. So there's about a 6 to 12 month wait. But I always say there's no harm in just getting in line. You never know. People might be moving out of their rental properties and buying. And so all of a sudden they're now off. And so there's more spaces to fill, or we might be in the midst of building a project that finally finishes completion and getting connected. So even if you're gonna have to wait no matter what. So you might as well just get on the list now, and then you'll save your spot in line, essentially. Okay, so then once you have been allocated, question?
Just because I feel like it's relevant right now to this part of the conversation. If I signed up and I said that I wanted to wait, what is the commitment of that if 6 months down the road something changes, like I move out of the service area, for example?
So if you move out of the service area, even if you forgot to tell us, like it wouldn't work. Like when we tried.
Well, yeah, but I'm wondering, like, is there a penalty if you get on the waiting list and then something happens, you have to remove yourself from that waiting list?
No penalty. Like ideally, you'd let us know, like, hey, I signed up. But by the way, I moved now and you didn't add me at the farm yet. We might say, oh, where are you moving? Like we can re-add your new address essentially. But there's no fee or penalty associated with forgetting to tell us if you forget. Was there another question? Okay, so let's now skip forward to when you have been assigned to a farm, and we'd be sort of communicating with you periodically through that time you were waiting. We'd say, oh, we finally got you on, in the next month it's gonna start. Let us know if anything changed since you signed up. Well, let's assume you're now on. So this is the best part. You are gonna get the dollar value of the electricity that your share of the solar farm produces directly on your electric bill as a credit. So this is my bill, and this is the new line that you would all get as community solar customers. It's called net metering credit. It's very confusing. We've asked Eversource many times if they would just call that community solar credit. Alas, this is what they give us. But so what this is saying is I got $269.38 off of my bill. So my Eversource bill is actually negative this month, which we'll get into in a second. But you can see here, my supply, this is when I'm living in National Grid territory now, but I figured since you guys are Eversource, I'd show you my old Eversource when I was living in Boston. You can see that I'm still part of my Boston community energy aggregation. So that community solar credit down here is not interfering with that. So again, step one, you are paying less to Eversource than you paid previously. However, we can't just be giving you these credits for free. That wouldn't be a very good business. We wouldn't make any money. So we do need to charge you for these credits. So essentially what will happen is you'll get a second bill a few weeks after that Eversource bill, except it'll be from Nexamp. And we'll be billing you for the value of the credits you received, except at a discount. So if you remember, I'm sorry, this might be a little small for you guys. If you remember, my credit amount was $269.38. And I'm now getting a bill from Nexamp a couple weeks later, and it's saying, hey, we're billing you for these $269.38 worth of credit that you got, but we're giving you a 12.5% discount, which is always the case every month for everyone in Eversource territory. So I only paid $235.71 to Nexamp for the $269.38 that I got on my Eversource bill. So essentially, I saved $33.67 in that transaction. And if it's easier in round numbers, say you got $100 worth of credit on your Eversource bill, you would only pay Nexamp $87.50. So you'd save $12.50 in that example. Make sense so far? Okay. So maybe to just bring it all full circle a bit again, I think this table might help. So I'll go through 3 different scenarios of what your electricity costs might have been. So the first is before Ashland Community Choice. Let's just say that you had $100 electric bill. And for simplicity, let's say $50 of that was the delivery, you know, for the poles and wires, and $50 of that was the supply. And if you remember back, if you've ever like really inspected your electric bill before, that's essentially the 2 major components of it. The supply piece, which you guys all have through Ashland Community Choice, and the delivery piece, which is just through Eversource. So in this case, you have $100 due to Eversource. You're not saving anything. You're just on the default everything. Now on Ashland Community Choice, which I believe I was looking it up, I think is through Dynegy, I don't know how to pronounce that. But your consultant Colonial sourced that supplier who's supplying that electricity for all the members of the aggregation. And I don't know exactly what the discount is, but let's just say that you're saving compared to that base Eversource electricity supply rate. So in this example, instead of paying 100, you're paying 88 because you paid $12 less on your supply. Make sense so far? Okay. So you guys all currently, unless you opted out of Ashland Community Choice, would be in this second column. So you're already doing great. You're doing better than all the other regular Eversource schmucks who are just paying, you know, that full supply rate. So first step, great job for Ashland for setting that up. And now here's how it would work for being on Ashland Community Choice and Community Solar. So nothing changes up here at the top. You're still paying your $50 for delivery. You're still getting your discounted supply, but now you're getting your net metering credit that we just looked at on my bill from Nexamp. So I'm just saying in this example, you're getting $80 of that net metering credit. So that's reducing the 88 that you would have paid down to 8, just like you saw on my Eversource bill. But now, instead of before, where you had no relationship with Nexamp as a company, you weren't paying them any money, you're now owing this second bill to Nexamp for the value of those credits, at a 10% discount. So you'd only be paying $70 for that $80 of credit that you got in your bill. So when you add it all up, in this case, you're only paying 78 compared to the 88 you would have been paying if you were just on Ashland Community Choice, compared to the 100 you would have been paying if you weren't on either. So that's sort of what I was saying before, that when you're on Ashland Community Choice and Community Solar, that's how you're maximizing your savings. I see some nodding heads. Is anyone not with me?
Do you wanna ask the Zoom if they have any questions real quick?
Anyone on the Zoom have any questions so far? I've got some more, but I figured before I get deeper, I'd stop.
I'm gonna try moving the camera back from you a little bit so it has a
Okay.
better angle on you. See if that helps.
Okay.
I see something in the chat. Is the credit only on the supply is the question that we received.
So it's actually applies to the delivery and the supply. So you see that you have your supply up here, you have your delivery here, and then you'll get this new section, other charges or credits. Actually, if you're on paperless billing, you might already have this section and you get like a really small, like 10-cent paperless billing credit or something. But so these credits that you get in other charges or credits apply to both the supply and the delivery, which is how your bill can be zero or even negative. Question on the tip of your tongue in the back?
Yeah, I am struggling a little bit to get to that point because, you're saying that because you're piggybacking off that, the Dynegy, let's call it, is us, they are supplying electricity to the aggregation program, and they are just supplying the energy portion of it. If we're not actually using their credits, for where they get it, we're using yours, how does that get piggybacked? I don't quite understand how that works.
So the short answer is it doesn't. Dynegy and Nexamp have no relationship. And the easiest way to explain it might be that if you had solar panels on your roof, which does anyone? Okay, so you have those net metering credits today on your bill. And the glory of owning your own solar panels is you don't get that second bill from Nexamp. You get all those net metering credits that you produce, they're all yours. And essentially all we're doing with community solar is replicating that experience where we're saying, you know, hey, Eversource, this big solar farm that's out on a landfill somewhere, instead of giving all those credits to the account of the solar farm, you know, because just like you have an electric meter at your house, the solar farm also has an electric meter. But unlike your meter, the electric meter at the solar farm spins backwards because it's putting electricity into the grid as opposed to your house that's sucking electricity out. And so by default, what Eversource would do is say, okay, solar farm account number, here's your tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of credits, which is essentially useless to us because the farm doesn't really uses minimal electricity. There might be a couple like lights around. So those bill credits would just be accruing on our bill forever that we would never pay. So essentially what we're doing with community solar, and this is what I was saying about the policy team, like we have to enact legislation that forces Eversource to let us distribute those credits to other people besides our own bill. All that's happening is Eversource is giving you credit for the credits that the solar farm received, even though that electricity is not flowing to your house. That electricity might not even be flowing to Ashland's. That electricity is just flowing to the grid. Eversource needs to give someone credit for that, and we're telling them it should be you. And so that has nothing to do with Dynegy.
And that's
essentially.
why if you live in the Eversource service area, you have to be contracted with one of the Nexamp farms in the Eversource service area, right? 'Cause it's all
Correct.
within that same
Yeah.
pool.
Cause it's just Eversource saying, all right, we're gonna distribute all this money that would have uselessly gone. Cause just like, you know, you all get a bill like this, you know, the solar farm also has a bill like this, and it's just like it would otherwise be a huge negative, useless number. So does that help a little bit?
I'm still processing.
Okay, maybe by the end it'll.
Okay, we have a couple more questions from the chat while we're paused here. There are two questions asking a similar thing. One says, I'm in the next town over, Holliston. Is this program exclusive to Ashland? If so, is there a similar program for Holliston? And then the question after that is asking if community choice or community aggregate is available in other towns other than Ashland. So I think those are two different questions, because one may be about the Nexamp program and one's about community choice. So if you can
Got it.
speak to both of
I'll
those.
start with the first. So any entity that has an Eversource or National Grid electricity account, so like if you get an electric bill for National Grid or Eversource, that can be an apartment, that can be a condo, that can be a house, that can be a library, that can be a church, that can be a school. Any entity that gets an electric bill can be a beneficiary of community solar. So all we're doing is telling Eversource the account number to put the credits on. That's part of why we need to ask for your bill, so we can get that. So even if you live in Halston, which I'm not, that's probably still Eversource would be my guess, you can still participate. If you're unlucky enough to be part of a municipal light program, then you unfortunately cannot participate.
And what is that for those of us?
So a municipal light program would be that instead of having an Eversource or National Grid electric bill, you have a Quincy Electric Company bill, where like the town of Quincy runs its own, you know, it's town employees as opposed to utility employees that are
The waiting
managing.
time is also independent then, right? It's the same for everybody.
Correct, same for everybody. And then to the second question of, can you be part of Ashland's community choice if you're not part of Ashland's? The answer unfortunately there is no. But there's nothing to stop you in your town from doing the same thing that Ashland did. I think there's probably like 50 or maybe even 100 towns in Massachusetts that have done this now.
You said you were part of one in Boston, correct?
I was part of one in Boston. I live in Newburyport now. There's one there too. So I'm just trying out all the community aggregation programs.
It says there is one in Holliston, if that was.
Okay,
specific
I
to
wasn't sure if those two were both in Holliston. So I would say to the person who commented asking about community aggregates, first step is Google your town and community aggregate electric to see if there's something on your town website about such a program.
And they all might be called something slightly different,
Right.
like community choice or community electricity or aggregated, you know, they all sort of have the same kind of name though.
Okay, and then we have one more question before we move on here. Does choosing a third-party supplier staff with community solar?
Yes, so, Dynegy is the Ashland Community Choice Programs supplier. You can also be a Dynegy customer as an individual. So say that you live in a town without, a municipal aggregation, you still as an individual can say, hey, Eversource, even though I'm not part of a big group, I still want a third party to supply my electricity that's not you. I'd say be careful with that though, because some of these companies can be a little bait and switchy, where they might say, oh yeah, sign up with us, we'll save you 20% off your supply rate. But then maybe they're only doing that for the first year, and then in the second year,
Yeah.
they're gonna bump you up to be even more expensive than the Eversource supply rate or Eversource base rate. So if you're doing it as part of a community choice aggregation, there's a town employee, you know, someone in Ashland Town Hall who's like renegotiating these contracts every few years and making sure you're actually saving money, so you don't have to worry about it. If you're doing it on your own, you will need to pay attention to that.
The fine print there.
Yeah, to the fine print, and essentially be looking very closely at, this section of your bill where you're seeing what your rate is, you know, 11.29 cents in this case per kilowatt hour. and be comparing that to, you can just Google it like Eversource electric base rate and it will tell you. And if that number ever gets to be higher than the Eversource base rate, then you know to call up your supplier and say, hey, I want to cancel or renegotiate or whatever, so. So yeah, you're more than welcome to do it, just beware, you're gonna have to pay attention to that.
All right, I think we're ready to move on. Just a reminder for those of us that are here in the library, we do need to be out of the library by about 7:50. So if we can make sure we leave enough time for some more questions at the end, that would be
And I
great.
saw your hand too, we can talk at the end in case we don't answer. Okay. So there's one catch, that I've been holding off, for now, just so that you guys can understand it first. But, when we're determining your allocation, the solar farm is not a, fixed monthly asset. So for any of you guys who have solar on your roofs, when do you get way more credits than otherwise? In the summer. Oh, okay, so if you got a pool, then the pool's using up all the credits all the time, probably. But for us in New England, maybe it'd be a little different if you lived in Arizona or somewhere closer to the equator where they're getting sun and direct sun all the time. Us in New England, we get a lot of great sun in the summer and we get a lot of not sun elsewhere in the year, right? So the solar farm follows this sort of green parabola shape here, where in those summer months, we're gonna be blasting you with credits, more than you need, which if you remember back to my Eversource bill, that's how my bill got to be negative, because I got more credit from the solar farm than my Eversource costs actually were. But that's okay, because in these winter months, my usage at my apartment, which is this gray line, is gonna be higher than the amount of credits I get, because the solar farm is gonna be spitting out very little electricity in the winter when it's gray and snowy and sleety and icy every day. So essentially, when we're doing your allocation, we're looking at it over the course of the year, which is why we paid so much attention to this table on the first page, so that we could say, all right, based on what we know about this parabola shape, here's the allocation you need, so that over the course of the year, you know, these low months and these high months and these low months will all add up to close to your annual costs with Eversource. So what does that mean? So if we think back to what we talked about in the previous slides, the first step is you get the credits each month from Eversource. The second step is then you'll get a bill from Nexamp for the value of those credits. So if you're getting more credits than you need in the summer, your then bills to Nexamp in the summer will be higher than what your Eversource bill would have been. So some people, when they're first starting, if they happen to start in the summer, they'll get that first bill and say, what the heck? I'm paying way more than I used to pay. I thought I was supposed to be saving. It's like, yes, you're paying more than you're supposed to pay this month, but in the winter, you're gonna have, you know, you're gonna be using up all those credits that you accrued in the summer. You'll see you'll just carry that negative balance on your Eversource bill until eventually it flips to positive again in the winter. So you can really only think about the savings over the course of the year, as opposed to individual months, because in those summer months, you are going to pay more than you were paying. But you're gonna save so much more in the winter, that it evens out over the course of the year. Did I lose people, or it makes sense?
Can you look one more time at your page that had the Eversource bill on it, just so I can see if I understand this correctly?
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that the total current charges there at the bottom, that negative 208,864, that stays on your Eversource account month over month?
Yep.
Okay, so then when you're paying Nexamp less, you'll still continue to have negative charges or lower bills? Okay,
But yeah, so you can see my supply was around 50, my delivery was 130. So I would have paid around $180 if I didn't have Nexamp. But I got $269 worth of credit that I paid Nexamp $235 for, so I paid $235 that month instead of $180.
But you paid Eversource nothing.
But I paid Eversource nothing, and I
And
paid
it's-
Eversource negative actually, and that negative is gonna carry over to those winter months when I'm gonna be getting many fewer credits. Did you have a question?
I think you misstated, your supply cost. It was 129 of his entire bill.
Oh, you're right, I'm sorry, I'm misreading it, okay, so yes.
The point doesn't change.
You're correct, yeah. I would have only paid 100, I was looking at the total instead of the subtotal. I would have only paid a total of $130 for my supply and delivery. But I ended up paying Nexamp $235. So this is the thing that trips up everyone. It's like, wait, that's so much. Like, I thought I was supposed to be saving. It's like, yes, you're gonna be saving over the course of the year. For those summer months, you're gonna be paying more.
It's like buying a coupon that will save you money in the long
Thank you, you're perfectly setting me up for my slide here.
So that begs the question that how stable is your company? Because there is this uncertainty in a sense, right? There's this 1 year uncertainty. And people have complained about this whole project sometimes. Is your company solid?
Yeah, I mean, short answer, yes. The longer answer is it doesn't matter. Because once those credits are on your bill, they're yours. They're not ours. Remember, we were essentially forfeiting that when we said, hey, Eversource, we don't want these credits on our bill at the solar farm. They're useless on our bill at the solar farm. We want them on your bills because they're actually useful to you. So as soon as it's on your bill, as soon as you have that, negative $208 balance, that's your negative $208 balance. So even if you canceled Nexamp the next day, that's still yours. You've already paid for that. So even if the solar farm were to catch on fire and burn down, all that would change is you'd stop getting net metering credits because the solar farm wouldn't be producing electricity anymore, but you would still have this credit that was already on your bill. Okay, so in summary, remember I said at the beginning, it's essentially getting free money. So it is getting free money as long as you're comfortable with these two things. The first, I don't know why they both say one, it should be 1 and 2, but the first is your Eversource bills will go down. You'll be paying less, but you'll be getting a second bill from Nexamp. Some people are like, that's like so frustrating. It's another thing in the mail, another thing I have to remember to do. What I do, I just sign up for paperless billing, so it sends me an email instead of something in the mail, and I sign up for auto pay. So it just is on autopilot essentially. Maybe for your first couple of months, you want to get the bill in the mail, so you remember to like do that, consolidating the Nexamp bill with the Eversource bill, make sure you're not getting billed for more credits than you got. But once you figure it out, it's essentially the same month after month forever. So you can just set it and forget it. But then the second thing, which we covered at the end there, was that you're essentially prepaying for electricity in the summer, which is sort of exactly what you're saying, that will then be used in the winter. So you're gonna be paying much more than you previously were in the summer, but you're gonna pay much less than you previously were in the winter. So as long as you're comfortable with those two changes, you're essentially getting for free all of that 12.5% over the course of the year, which depending on how much electricity you use, could be hundreds of dollars back in your pocket over the course of the year. Does that make sense? I'm seeing some nods. Question?
How often do you set what frequency do you set that credit?
Good question. You're getting right in. This is perfect. You guys are like leading me into my next slides here. The good news is that when we set your allocation, it is not set in stone and permanent marker. It can be changed. About every month, sometimes every few months, Eversource gives us the opportunity to change those allocations. So say you get heat pumps at your house, or an EV charger at your house, or a pool or a hot tub, or induction stove, all the things that Energize Ashland is trying to encourage you to do, your electricity usage will go up. So then we could increase your allocation from 7 panels to 9 panels. So that you would then be getting more credits to match up with your higher Eversource costs. The same, it can be in reverse. Say your kids go to college, you're empty nesters now, all of a sudden, there's a lot less electricity usage in your house. You don't need as many credits as you were previously getting, we can lower your allocation. And that can change as many times, as it needs to. But like, again, you won't really know you're getting too many or too few until a full year passes to know like, hey, did you work off your negative balance with Eversource, or is it just increasingly negative and negative and negative even in month 14, month 15? In which case we maybe gave you too large of a share. Because ultimately we're estimating, right? Like we're estimating based off of
Do you guys
your previous 12
automatically
months.
adjust that allocation, or does that require a request from the user?
You have to tell us, that's the bummer. We cannot see this amount. All we know is how many credits you got. Eversource will not tell us what this amount is. Essentially just you can keep an eye on that to say, oh my God, it's like, been a full year now and I have $1,000 worth of credits. I'm getting too many. But generally, when we're looking at your previous 12 months, that's generally a pretty good indicator of what your next 12 months will be. I guess global warming is changing that a little bit, but if anything, that's making your usage go up instead of go down. Does that make sense?
So this means that you can actually supplement if you have solar on your roof, from the FAQ that.
Yeah, exactly. So let's say you have solar on your roof, you're already getting net metering credits, but it's not enough, like your roof is too small, or you've since done one of these electrification upgrades that increases your usage. You can have we can essentially go through this entire process that I just described, but we'd just be looking at your net to see how much are you paying Eversource net of what your solar panels are producing. Who's eligible for community solar? I already covered that. Will I start saving my first month?
Depends on what your first month is.
Thank you. I already covered what happens if usage goes up or down, what happens if I move. Yeah, again, just let us know, if you plan on moving. Cause let's just say you're in the summer and you're gonna be moving in September when a lot of leases end. If you move when you have that really large negative balance, if you're moving outside of Eversource territory, you might not be able to transfer those credits. You cannot. If you are moving to another residence in Eversource territory, you can transfer those credits. But that can be the only thing that can get you if you're, just accrued that huge negative balance and then you're moving suddenly, where we don't have that opportunity to sort of wean you off of the credits before you move, you could get stuck, with some credits, on your bill. But again, you'd only get stuck if you were moving out of Eversource territory. Yep.
Do you sign on for a term for a certain length?
Technically, like you're signing a contract, which is just like a stipulation that goes into all these laws that get changed to enable this program to happen. But if you read the fine print of the contract, it's like incredibly favorable to you. Like it essentially just says, that you're allowed to cancel at any time with no fee, no penalty or anything like that.
Well, you have the long wait list, it sounds like, so you have
Exactly.
somebody ready to pick up the.
Yeah. What was I gonna add to that? I lost my train of thought, sorry. But as long as I answered your question, we're good.
Just recognizing we do have about 5 minutes
Okay.
left. Just so everybody knows.
Yep, you can participate if you have rooftop solar. We covered why the solar farm's not close to your house, and we covered Nexamp's responsible land use. We try to have sheep and pigs and cows and wildflowers and
Propane pots.
What'd you say?
Cranberry bogs.
Cranberry bogs would be cool. The water and solar panels don't always, go well together, but, maybe like right next to the cranberry bog. Or I guess floating solar maybe. So yeah, I guess with the time we have left, what other questions are there?
What's it gonna cost?
Yeah, the question was, for everyone online, what's it gonna cost? The answer is nothing. Like, there's no sign-up fee, there's no initiation fee, there's no cancellation fee, there's no penalties or fees. The only thing it's gonna cost is the value of those credits that you get.
So you don't get a bill until you start getting those credits?
Exactly. You won't be paying anything to Nexamp until after you start getting those negative amounts on your Eversource bill. And you're gonna be paying Nexamp less than those negative amounts on your Eversource bill.
This doesn't apply to us, but what if you're late paying Nexamp, like suppose that you owe $250 to Nexamp and it's due like, September 1st, and if you don't do it, what's the fee, the penalty?
Yeah, just to repeat, the question was, what happens if you're late to pay Nexamp? So we get it, energy bills are tough, they can be high. And we offer payment plans, like if you call us and say, hey, I got this bill, it's really tough for me to pay this, peak summer generation bill, can I pay it to you over the course of 2 months or 3 months? We'll work with you on that. But it's not sort of like an automatic feature in the platform. You just need to call us to set that up.
All right, one more question from the chat here. I'm currently on Arcadia's solar farm. They give 10% off the solar farm production, which is only 60% off the bill. So it works out to be only 6% off the total bill. So this question is, once again, would the credit be 12% off the total bill?
It's 12.5%.
12.5.
Off the value of the credits. You should always think about it as like not the value of the bill, it's the value of the credits. So Arcadia, and I think they're actually misunderstanding, because Arcadia is one of our competitors. It works exactly the same way. They're following all the same rules that we are. Like there's no opportunity for differentiation really, like this is how it works, this is how it has to work. And so the only difference is, here, where I showed with Nexamp, you're getting 12.5% off the value of the credits. In this case with Arcadia, you're only getting the 10% off.
But it would work the same way where it's the value of the.
Otherwise, it works the same way. Those credits are applying to the delivery and the
So is
supply.
that competition to your company or is this?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess our discount's a little better, 2.5%.
Good for you to know.
But I mean, really, like, sign up for all of them, that's what I do, get yourself on all the waiting lists, whichever one gets you off the waiting list first. The other ones, it'll just sort of cancel out. But again, you don't know, does this company Arcadia, are they headquartered in Boston, Massachusetts? Are they coming and doing talks like this? Are they being good with their responsible land use? You don't know. So, you can keep those things in mind, but the more people on community solar, the better.
Okay, well, thank you, Mike. I know there may be more questions, so I would invite you all to email info@energizeashland.org if you have further questions, and we will either connect you with Mike directly or answer the questions as the Energize Ashland team. If you haven't had a chance to check out the Energize Ashland website yet, please go to energizeashland.org. We have information about community solar, we have information about other sustainability actions. And you can email us at any time through the website as well. And we have a whole team of folks who review the questions, and we kind of select who has the most knowledge, and they'll reach back out to you. But I also do know the library staff want to make sure we're out of here officially by 8, so we're gonna go ahead and stop the recording and close up the event. But thank you to everybody on Zoom for attending. We will also post the recording of this. Apologies for camera issues earlier in the recording. Thank you so much, Mike, for coming and sharing with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Thanks for organizing the event, and for everyone in the chat, I just put my email in there too. If that's easier than going through these guys at Energize Ashland.
Yeah, I want to mention that the Energize Framingham has quite a bit of information on their website about this too, if you want to read about it, it's good. So, and it gives you also another option that you can check out, besides Nexamp, so that's worth it.